Greetings, everyone. I'm going to walk you through a couple of workflows in our estate application. This is probably from the perspective of a real estate agent entering a new vendor that they work with and a new project. So with that, let's go ahead and start with the demo. I should remind you that I'm using a prototype tool. Isn't the actual app. So what this actually looks like, the look and feel will probably be vastly different. What I want you to really focus on now is just the process and the flows. And don't worry too much about how things look or what is in writing on the screen. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log in to the system. I have a couple of options here. I'm going to go ahead and first create a new vendor. So I'll select this button here to create my vendor. When I do that, I'll select the button. It'll then list all of the active vendors that I have. I may have some vendors that I don't have as active, um, and maybe other vendors that are pending, and I'll talk about pending in a second. So these are all of my active vendors. I am thinking about creating different icons for different types of vendors. So for example, anything that's inspection related, we'd have a magnifying glass. Anything that's related to cleaning or house cleaning, which would be windows, house cleaning, and other areas would have this type of an icon. And then for photo video, we're looking at this sort of an icon. So this is again just very rough. So if I want to add a new vendor, I have a couple of options. So let's say I have a list. I have a bunch of vendors that I want to add to the system. This would be the ability to upload a file. Maybe it's an Excel file or a text file that has all your vendors and the information to do that. Now, obviously, that would be a little more difficult to do this on a mobile phone, although certainly not impossible. The other route, and the one I'm going to talk about now, is just adding a vendor manually. So I'd go ahead and select this plus button, and on this screen, and we'll have a wizard that we're going to flow through to build this each new vendor. So in this case, I had the vendor name. This case we call it prop guard, the vendor's address, and then basic contact information. I'll then hit the next button. Now, what we also want to specify for the vendor is what services do they offer. Now, some vendors might just offer one service, or it could be a one-man band type setup. But in the case of some vendors, they may offer a number of different services. So this is where I can collect the different services that a particular vendor would offer. This is not an exhaustive list of services. This just gives us an example. So I've already pre-selected the services that this particular vendor is offering. I'll then hit next. And this is just a summary screen, which would essentially list everything that I've entered. And if there were certain sections that I wanted to edit, I would go ahead and select that now. I'll then go ahead and hit submit. Now, what I envision happening here is an email or perhaps a text message will be sent out to this particular vendor asking them to join our platform. And they'll then receive that, go in, and then there'll be some further information that we'll ask of that vendor. Maybe it's, perhaps, I don't know, any other additional information that the agent may not know. Maybe one of them is where all of the new requests should go. Should it go to a specific email address? And then also maybe things like banking information for payment. So then once we go past this splash screen, I'll now see this new vendor that I added in a pending status. So until the vendor completes the onboarding process where they get the invite, they go in and they complete the process, they'll show up here as pending. Now, in the case where the vendor said, hey, I didn't receive the invite, I can go in and I can click this button and enter a new email address or perhaps mobile number to send a text message to resend that invite to that particular vendor. So once the vendor is now, they finished the setup, now let's say I'm the agent, I can go into more of a global section about my vendors And now what I can do is I can prioritize by each service. So for home inspections, I would prefer to use PropGuard over specialty, and maybe for termite, I prefer specialty over PropGuard. So these little cards here, I'll be able to move up and down to specify the priority, like which vendor I prefer the most for each one of these services. Um, and further, if I have resources at a particular vendor, for example, at PropGuard, if there are 2 home inspectors or 3 that I like to work with, and maybe I have a priority of those 3, I'll click this button here, and that will enable me to enter in the resources, my preferred resources at PropGuard in the order I would like to get them. So for example, if Dave Jones is not available, then it would go to Deb Smith and then John Doe and then so on. So let's go ahead and save this. So this is a quick overview of how I add a vendor, and then once the vendor is added in the system, how I can prioritize vendors that, that I want to use when I select them for listings. So let's now go back to the main menu. And now let's say I have a new listing. So what I'll do from this point is I'll select projects. This will show my active projects that I have going on right now. We're looking at maybe I have active or ones that I've completed. There's a number of different ways that we can display this information or filter the information. But this is my main list here, my projects. Now, if I want to add a new project, I'll go ahead and select the plus button down here. And here I will provide basic information about the project. So here we have the project name. If I want to add a description, is this for a real estate sale? In most cases, it will be. And then here's where we can enter some key dates that estimated dates. So for example, when do we think, this is estimated listing? Maybe we'll have something for showing. And then maybe even have some rough dates on when we would like to have certain types of inspections or other services completed. These dates would then drive some of the screens that we're going to see later. Now I'll hit the next button. Now for my project, the next thing I'm going to describe is the property itself. What's the property address? And then basic characteristics about this property. And this is pretty much what's filled out now when inspections or services are ordered. I'll then hit the next button. These are all the services that I'm going to want for my particular listing or project. So in this case, I need a termite inspection, home roof. I want some staging, photos, and then I need a painter in there. Now I can certainly come back later and add as I would like, but this is just the initial services that I'm selecting for this particular project. I'll hit next. This is really the time window. This definitely needs some work here, but essentially, this is saying, what dates and time windows I want each one of these particular services to take place. I can either have default dates that are set based on dates that I set earlier in the process, or I can change any one of these dates. The last thing would be, are there any additional contacts that I would like to add to this project? So maybe, and at the very top one, this would be the agent. So in this case, I'm the project owner and I'm the listing agent. So that would be put in by default, but then I can add additional people in here that I may want to have, associated with this project, either that they could go in and view certain communications or documents related to the project, or they would receive certain updates, like when a particular services have been completed, when maybe a report has been completed. So, me as the project owner, I can add as many of these contacts that I want to this page. And again, I can control what communications I want them to receive or not, and also what areas of the system I want them to be able to view or not. So then I'll go ahead and hit next. This is another summary screen. where I would just summarize all of the information that I input in the earlier screens. I can go ahead and click edit if I want to change any of the information that I entered before. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll hit submit. So what's happening now is the project is now being created, and more importantly, the requests are being sent out to the vendors that I selected, and it's based on the prioritization that I have specified. Um, so once the project has been set up, then it shows up now as active, and I can see it right here on my screen. So that is the two workflows to set up a new vendor and set up a new project.